Every character, location, or experience you've read about in my crime fiction novels holds a piece of reality. I'm Helen Taylor. Welcome to the story behind my stories, the video podcast where crime fiction meets my authentic experience. Here, we delve into the real-life inspirations and intimate stories that shaped my novels. Discover how my everyday encounters, adventures, and travels translate into tales as gripping as they are genuine. The story behind my stories goes behind the words on the page to reveal the backstory that inspires my writing. Hit follow or subscribe and ensure you're part of this journey. Hi, welcome to episode 3 of the story behind my stories. Now, we left last week with me arriving at Charm Beach. I'm going to read the excerpt from Tie-Dye on when that happened for Goodwin, as this again was very similar to my experience that first time when I was going to help Paul. This is right at the start of chapter 2. Goodwin could feel the adrenaline start to pump around his body as he walked through the sand outside the reception and stepped onto the concrete floor. That was exactly how I felt. I was here. I was so close to seeing Paul, but I was still really nervous. And as you walked, the restaurant area at Charm was a concrete floor with a wooden roof on stilts, and then it was enclosed the kitchen area behind, towards the back, that you walk past as you walk in. So I stepped up and Paul was sat watching the TV just there, and I remember him looking so grateful that I was there. He was never a very affectionate person, but he gave me a hug. I wasn't allowed to hug him because there was too many raw bits of no skin on his back. His hand was all bandaged up, and he straight away got Liam, who managed Charm Beach Resort. He wasn't the owner. The owner was Mug and Lek, but I hadn't met them at that point. But Liam ran the resort, managed it on their behalf, and Paul had obviously primed them for me arriving, and so Liam dashed off to show me my room, the room that he'd given me. Now at Charm, there was if you were facing the ocean, to the right there were 3 or 4 wooden huts on stilts. And when I say wooden huts, they were literally 6 foot by 6 foot, maybe. Those were the long-term guests. That was where Paul stayed. It was really, really cheap to stay there. And then there were 3 bungalows along the front that literally looked out on the sea. And then there were some bungalows a row behind the seafront ones, and then perpendicular to them were some brick built ones, not wooden. They were brick built or concrete ones. They were the most they were the poshest ones, most luxurious ones. But remember, we are on a backpacker island here. But they were really nice rooms. They are like a hotel room, but as an individual property. So Liam took me over there and showed me that room. Paul at that time wasn't staying in his standard one mini wooden hut on stilts room. They had given him one of the beachfront ones so that he could recuperate. So I have a lot of memories of that week in looking after Paul. I'd taken with me all the necessary natural remedies, essential oils, aloe vera, saline solution, in order to keep his hand clean. And every morning and every night I would take off the dressing, bathe the wound. When I got there, it was like the side of an orange across through. There was a hole through the middle sort of there, and then the wound was all the way about the size of an orange on his hand. So bathed that, dressed that with the essential oils, and then with the aloe vera, and then bandage it again. Sit there and hold his hand in mine and give him some Reiki for 5 minutes or so, morning and night. He was on a lot of painkillers and he was clearly in a lot of pain, and the wound didn't look great when I got there. The other ones on his back, his arms, his backside and his legs, they were all healing, scabbed up, but the wound through his hand, that was starting to look quite a funny colour around the edge. He didn't want to go back into hospital, he didn't want to go and see anybody else. I think half of what he wanted was just a bit of love and attention. So yeah, we did that morning and night. It's funny because when I was starting my Reiki, Paul was a bit woo-woo for him. Didn't believe it or had any interest in it. He didn't have a choice. When I went out to Thailand, I told him that I would be bringing natural remedies and natural remedies only, and he would have to live with that. Which is, partly why I say I think he wanted just a friendly face as much as anything. But then when I started using them, so basically by the end of the week, when I was due to come home, it was now sort of the size of a penny. It was beautifully healed with no scarring. And Paul, to this day, puts that wholly down to the natural remedies and the Reiki, as much the Reiki as anything. And so he swore to me then he was never, ever, ever going to dismiss my natural remedies again because of the wonder that had. But obviously just dressing his hand in the morning and dressing his hand in the evening, there wasn't a lot else to do in regards to looking after him. So he'd suggested that I did my paddy course while I was there. He knew I was fairly active and quite into trying different sporting things. I don't know that ever really wanting to go under the sea was my thing. Everything I'd done was on top of the water. I was rowing, windsurfing, things like that. So and swimming. But I did sign up for my paddy course. Was really enjoying it in the pool, doing all of that. And it was a 4-day course. And then we went out in the sea. I freaked out big time, and swam straight to the surface, and that was it. Wasn't doing that again. So I never got my paddy that time when I was out there looking after Paul. But I did get a taste of Thailand, and I loved it. From the person sort of 6 or 7 days earlier who dreaded going to Thailand, dreaded Asia and what it might be, that by the end of the time I loved it. I didn't meet so many people there. I met Piek, who used to drive the truck, and so he would drop me in town or drop me for my paddy training, and acted as a taxi service for Charm Beach. Liam, obviously, who ran Charm Beach. I think I was introduced and I met Mug, and I'm not sure if I met Lek that time. Mug was the headmaster of the local school on Koh Phangan, and he owned Charm Beach, and he'd always lived on Charm Beach. So there is a couple of lines where I briefly mention Goodwin glimpsed his first view of the beach with a vast sandbank leading out into the sea as he rounded the corner. Charm Beach was a very flat level and literally was on the beach. Maybe this would be the time to... No, I'm going to keep that for a little bit later. So when the tide was out, or let's say when the tide was in, it just looked that the beach was, the sea was 30 feet from the bungalow and the restaurant. But when the sea was out, when the tide was out, in front of Charm, out into the sea, was a massive sandbank that you could walk out. And that was one of the things that struck me, having not been to Asia or anywhere where the sea is that warm, that amount of the year, was how warm the sea was. So Paul wasn't allowed by me or recommended by the Thais not to go in the sea because the temperature was exactly right for infection in open wounds, because it was like getting in a bath. It really was, and it was beautiful. It was really beautiful. If I've synced it all up right, you should be seeing pictures now of Charm Beach that I took, that were mine. They're my pictures from when I went there. So that first week, that was my first week in Thailand. It was an amazing experience for me because I'd never wanted to go. I went to help a friend in need. The natural remedies and the Reiki that I had faith in paid off and really helped Paul. He was in a much better place, both physically and mentally, when my week came to an end. And I was quite looking forward to the journey back home and back to work. And I knew then, I think, that wouldn't be my last visit. And as I was going, all of the Thais, I should mention Dewey here. Dewey was the waitress in the restaurant at Charm. She was there when you went in the morning first thing, and she served you last thing at night as well. She was always there, and she ended up marrying a British postman and moving to the UK. So a lot of the Thai people that I talk about in the book are a mix of the people I met. So the lad that shows Goodwin to his room, which I will tell you about in another episode, is Liam, but it isn't Liam as he looks. And Piek, the taxi driver, isn't Piek in the book, but somebody else is based on Piek. Not in their nature or characteristics, but just the vibe I got from them, I suppose. So Dewey, who worked in the restaurant, who we became really close friends over my time in Thailand, not just that first week, what she did is based on the character that works in the restaurant in the book. So I'm going to read you that extract. He locked up his bungalow, taking his passport with him, and walked over to the restaurant. There were 3 girls and 2 boys sitting at one long table, laughing and chatting away in the carefree way the young do. 2 guys in their late 20s, Goodwin judged, were sitting at another. There was no sign of Dave. Goodwin took a seat at one of the tables, looking out over the beach and sea, his back to the rest of them. A young Thai girl, clear skin, bright eyes, and smooth dark hair, cut in a chick bob, handed Goodwin a menu, a pen, and a book with the number of his room on it. "You write what you like," she said to him. He nodded, thanked her, and studied the menu. So that was the way it worked. You had a book which was the book for your room, and you would go to the restaurant, you'd grab a menu, you'd grab your book, you'd look in the menu, whatever you wanted, you'd write in your book. And Dewey would walk around the restaurant and ask you what you wanted, and she would make a note of what you'd put in your book, and she would go off into the kitchen and get it for you. And then when you came to the end of the week to pay your bill, they would go through and add up everything written in your book. So there was half an element of honesty and half an element of them ensuring that you were writing down what you were having. That way it meant that you weren't exchanging money all the time, and you need a bottle of water. You could walk into the restaurant and grab a bottle of water out of the fridge, which was accessible there, and you just put it in your book so that you weren't taking up their time and you didn't have to wait for any of the soft drinks or things that were in the fridge. Charm had 2 dogs, a Rottweiler and an Alsatian. I don't remember that one being around all the time, but the Rottweiler was. He was on a long chain, and he was the guard dog. They also had some chickens, and they also had a goat. And Liam, the manager, he had a rifle, and he would go hunting, come back with squirrel tails on his belt, and he also used to make yogurt from the goats. So they were a little bit self-sufficient, and it was a very relaxed place to stay. Obviously, I had never been to Asia or to anywhere backpacker like, so I wasn't. It was all new to me, and it's all new to Goodwin in the book. So my feelings that first time I was there were very reflected in Goodwin when he was there. Even though he was older than me, like I've said, I was still that much older than everybody else that was there, that not everybody, but a lot of them, that it was, I could draw enough on that difference between me and the majority coming through Charm to reflect it in the character of Goodwin and when he is there in Thailand. So my week drew to an end. Paul was, as I say, healing really well, much better frame of mind. I'd loved meeting Dewey and Piek and Liam, and I made my journey home. No plans or expectations of if or when I would ever go back to Charm at that time, or even Thailand. But even though there were no plans, as I left, I think I knew in my heart that I would be going back, because I came home with that phrase they talk about, the Thais and Thailand. It is the land of the smiles, and the Thai people were just lovely. So I think I knew then that I would be going back. What I didn't know was how soon that would be. And I will talk to you about that next time.